push me, and then just touch me, till I can get my satisfaction.
Hey! We're recording the podcast! Shut up!
Good morning to you, wherever you are, because it is
Morning Somewhere!
for November 19th, 2024. My name is Bernie Burns, sitting right over there. She switches once every 7 days. It's Ashley Burns. Say hi to Ash, everybody. Make it really quiet, really fast. Here's Trevor. Oh, no, that's me. How you doing, everybody? It is a Tuesday. We have some snow on the ground here, babe.
Yeah, it's winter is here.
Yeah, so yesterday I was talking about the movie The Substance. And
that you were trying to watch, but having difficulty actually figuring out how to watch.
Yeah, everyone else seems to be able to figure this stuff out much faster than I do. And I did say that it was on some streaming service that you have to sign up for a trial that I've never heard of. This one is called Mubi, which is not Tubi, or maybe it's the mobile version of Tubi.
I think this one is related to
Ooby-dooby.
Amazon. Can we stop? Can we just say no? We have enough.
Consolidation. Time to consolidate some of these streaming services.
Let's get to that stage of the streaming services where they all start to buy each other up, and then we don't have to have like 8,000 of them.
So I'm on my free trial. I signed up, put in my credit card and everything like that. So I have 7
You're really
days.
committed.
Yeah, so I watched Substance last night. So thanks to everyone from the subreddit who pointed it out. I also want to say thank you to somebody. Let me see their name here. Real Odd Thomas. When we were talking about body horror yesterday, and I was saying that's a new thing, and I hadn't heard about body horror. Apparently, it's been around since the 80s. I would have called body horror gore.
Is the term been around since the 80s, or the existence of the thing? Because I feel like the thing of body horror has obviously been around a really long time. I would say The Fly would count, right? That's something terrible happening to a body. Alien.
How about
like
every movie they let us watch as teenagers in the 80s? For some reason that we were allowed in the 80s to just watch whatever the hell we wanted.
Teenagers? I was in single digits when I saw some of that stuff. That was way too young.
They need to go back and look at that. Like, why in the 80s did they let us watch teenager? I think it was like a puritanical thing. You know, there was that swing back from like the 60s. In the 80s, it was like no drugs, no sex, no anything. You remember like they would have sleepover parties or whatever, or summer camps, and two teenagers would have sex, and you knew they were going to die. Like, at the moment they started to have sex, you knew the killer was going to kill them.
Well, I mean,
What was that?
It's part of the traditional formula.
It's very strange. And they even lampoon that in Cabin in the Woods, right?
They do. They absolutely do.
Yeah. I always get, by the way, Cabin in the Woods confused with Knock at the Cabin Door, which was the Dave Bautista.
Right. That's
thing.
the Shyamalan movie.
Yeah,
right?
it's the one that now Dave Bautista has lost a ton of weight because he gained a bunch of weight, apparently, to play that role. I actually liked that movie. I thought it was pretty cool.
I haven't seen it. There's only so many Knock at the Cabin in the Woods movies that I can fit into my brain, and they're gonna start overlapping each other. For me,
You should watch Knock at the Cabin Door, though, because it's got a guy that you really like that we don't see in very many things. It's got the guy who played later in the run King George from the Hamilton stage play.
Oh, I do like him.
Yeah. The guy whose name is not Josh Gad.
His name, oh no, hold on. I'm blanking, but I'm going to remember it halfway through this podcast and I'll come back to it. But he's also, by the way, he is Kristoff in Frozen.
Right. That's probably why I confused him with Josh Gad, who played Olaf.
No, his name is...
I don't confuse the two people because they look nothing alike. It's just the name. And by the way, this guy... there's a documentary about Christopher Reeve that's out right now, as you know, on the cover of this thing. He's
Jonathon
Superman.
Groff.
Jonathon
Groff.
Is it Groff? Okay.
Groff.
He looks just like Christopher Reeves as Superman on the poster for this documentary. Anyway, we're way off on a tangent. After the podcast, I did look up, and it has been in use apparently since the 80s. And the term body horror, this is from Wikipedia, was first used by Philip Brophy. What a great name. What's up, Brophy? In the 1983 article, Horrality, the textuality of the contemporary horror film. But from our subreddit, this is Real Odd Thomas said, funny enough, I am a university film studies lecturer specializing in horror films. Ashley, could we have a conversation where it can be so specific that someone in our subreddit doesn't have this for a career? We have to think of what that would be.
how many actual astronauts have we got?
We had somebody who worked on a rocket.
We did. We
Yeah.
have actual rocket scientists, which is why I'm saying that I'm trying to get the smallest possible job group, right? I feel like astronauts,
I don't think we can do it.
Been in space. I think that one is a pretty small job group.
I think we could talk about like having caffeine in the morning and saying, well, I'm an organic chemist and I specialize in sinister orientation, mononucleotides. Something. Anyway, Real Thomas said, funny enough, university film student, lecturer specializing in horror films, and I can confirm that body horror is not a new term. It has been around since the 1980s. Largely, it was inspired by the increase in films like Alien and The Thing. That Thing's a great one, which utilize recurring visual tropes of the gruesome destruction of the human form. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Real Thomas, for correcting me. And so as your reward, you are going to be banned from our subreddit.
How dare you speak to me?
But I watched it. So I watched The Substance.
How is it? What do you think? Is it worth all the effort that you put into figuring out how to watch it?
Fucking loved it. And if gore is not your thing, like if
It is not.
body horror is not your thing, it does not bait you at all. It's like right out of the gate. In the first act, the body horror stuff starts. There's some really disturbing images.
What is this movie?
15 minutes of the film. So, potential spoiler. I'm not going to go deep into it, but just the overall premise. Demi Moore plays an aging star. She has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That's a tremendous sequence at the beginning of the movie. She's aged out. And Dennis Quaid.
She hit 40, 30.
Dennis Quaid plays this tremendous. He must have loved playing this because I'm sure he's met like 1,000 guys like this. This producer who's just like, has that veneer of like being honest with you, but he's just really cruel and awful. And he's telling her that she's basically aged out. They want to replace her with somebody else. And then there is this secret thing called the substance, which this gets a little spoilers because this is pretty cool, but a cool premise spoiler. When she takes this drug, there's 3 steps. She activates, so she injects herself with it. You can only activate once. That creates a whole new person based on her, like a young version of herself.
Okay.
This is where the body horror, because it literally comes out of her. So it's pretty gross.
Oh.
The next step is they have to stabilize. So the younger version has to stabilize with some kind of fluid that's injected from the older person who goes catatonic once a day for 7 days. Every 7 days, they have to switch. They have to go back and forth. Reminding me of 2 things on a premise basis. Aesthetically, it reminded me, weirdly enough, of the... remember the Satisfaction video from the early 2000s by Ben Benassi?
Benny Benassi. I watched that music video on repeat.
It was so similar in its aesthetic and the tone of it that I actually had to go look up and make sure that he didn't direct it. It's actually a female director.
Did it have a lot of like on-screen tips for power tools?
No, it didn't have anything like that. It's just like the colors, and then she's like...
Almost like the bright bubblegummy...
She's like a fitness celebrity, too. They don't really go into too much of what she did before
that, like,
that.
Sexy, glossy, we're talking like 80s aerobics kind of vibes.
It's kind of timeless, too. There's bits of it, like you try to pin down like what the time period for it is, and you really can't do it. It's pretty... I mean... overall, it's tremendous. But it's just, anyway, it's a great, really, really great analysis of age and beauty. And there's moments in this that are just incredible. For people who don't like gore, it'd be tough to get through it. But there's some moments that are just like, they're very, I feel like, important to watch. There's a moment with Demi Moore in a mirror. And it's just... it's incredible. It's an incredible moment, and it delivers it really, really well. But it also reminded me, while I was saying this, I can't remember the name of the movie, but there was a premise for a movie that I loved where there was a woman who, when she would fall asleep, she would wake up and she had a different life. Like
was this Last Night in Soho? Is this the one that had, who was in that? I think.
And she didn't know which one she was, if she was the person that was the therapist or something, or the person who was the housewife at home with the... traditional family and things. And when she fell asleep, she would dream that she was the other one, and she flipped back and forth between these 2 lives. I always thought that was a really interesting premise,
Yeah, that was, I believe that was an Edgar Wright film.
Was it really?
I think so.
I think it predates Edgar Wright by quite a bit, the one I'm thinking of.
Okay, because this one came out just a couple years ago.
I'll look it up and we'll figure it out. We'll drop in the link dump. It just reminded me of that. But I really loved it. It's a tough movie to recommend because it is so shocking. It kind of, like, when it gets into the body horror stuff, before it gets super bad, like to the Thing level, you know, like our good friend on the subreddit mentioned.
How dare you speak to me?
Before we get to that level, there's a couple images that are just like, nope, I'm out of this.
Well, and see, that's what worries me is I don't handle gore all that well. I don't like it. I close my eyes. I have to like stop watching or leave the room if things get really bad. I hear nothing but good things about this movie, and it makes me want to watch it, but I'm not sure that I can. I'm not sure I can get the good stuff out of the movie that other people who are better able to tolerate gore can get out of the movie.
Okay. It's weird. It's like it's a horror movie with a message, essentially, which is interesting and tough. You know what I mean? But I loved it. And might also because I worked in entertainment for a long time. But I think anyone can relate to the idea of aging. Like yesterday, we were talking about, would you fight yourself at 27 years old?
Yeah, it turns out a lot of 27-year-olds got real smart alecky about that one.
Why, are they upset about it?
No, they're just like, yeah, I would fight myself. What's up? But speaking of, Bernie, aging stars, there's a new star on the horizon. Her name is Daisy, and she doesn't exist. It's a UK phone company called O2, and they've just announced they've got this new ad campaign for a character named Daisy, who's like an AI-generated grandma who's actually designed to stay on the phone with phone scammers and waste their time. So I've seen a lot of these sort of videos on YouTube and things over the last few years, especially where it'll be someone basically recording themselves on the phone with the phone scammer, just seeing how much of the scammer's time they can waste.
There's even a influencer who does these, who has an old woman filter voice that he does, and he's really good at it.
Well, they actually O2 worked with a YouTuber named Jim Browning, who's does this sort of like these sort of scam time waster videos.
Oh, that might be him.
To develop this AI. And so she's a grandma, and she tells meandering stories and gives out like wrong information and forgets details and all kinds of. She's designed to waste scammers' time, which I think is hilarious, and I love everything about it. But then in the back of my head, I question, well, we know that AI is very energy intensive. I would love to see if some sort of like energy economist is able to do math on how much energy this time wasting takes and if that's sufficient. Because it is true that old people are generally the subject of scammers. So I love to see them basically get all their time wasted trying to get money out of like old people who don't get technology.
It's horrible.
I think that's just the shittiest thing.
It's incredibly shitty.
Awful.
It's like, especially when you hear someone on the other line who's older and confused and just scared, they just sound scared. They're usually threatening them with some kind of like IRS scam, or they're going to go to jail or something. It's just, I don't know how people can do that to each other.
So I agree. So I love the idea of them getting screwed over.
I don't remember where I saw this, and this is off the cuff, so I'll have to go look this up as well. But I did read recently someone had come up with a metric for how much clean drinking water is wasted every time you ask an AI a question.
Ooh.
So like every 5 questions was like a liter of clean drinking water, to show both the energy impact and the climate impact of engaging with AI stuff. And I'll go find out what that is, because I think that's a great way to do it. If you can give people a way to visualize things, I think that helps a lot.
It does, although I don't know that a lot of us necessarily have an appreciation for the energy required to make water clean and put it through the system, and what all goes into that. What are you showing me?
I'm going to show you the sequence, the initial transformation from the
You're
substance.
showing me one of the worst body horror sequences?
You just tell me I said there was images in this before it gets really bad. You'll know if you're part of it or not.
First of all, what's up butt? That's a naked butt.
There's
right
a lot
there.
of nudity in this, which I'm grateful it's a female director, because there was a lot of scenes in here, especially with Margaret Qualley, where you're thinking, oh, this is really cool and very artful, and in 10 years, they go to jail.
Extraordinarily problematic.
Yeah. So we're watching the transformation. This is before it gets really bad. Is it playing? Oh, no, it's not playing. I'm the grandmother AI.
I'm the suspense right now.
Just tell me immediately.
Oh my God.
Tell me when you want to get out.
Oh God, no, I'm out. Not because it's like
It's tough.
No, it's not like
It's tough.
bursting blood or anything, but it's just that was very unsettling.
There was one of the more unsettling images that I've ever seen with eyes before. And eyes are a weird thing. They can really fuck.
Window to the soul, baby.
Yeah.
Window to the soul.
There was remember back in the day with video games, there was a scene in Dead Space. You probably never played Dead Space.
Too much gore.
Yeah, it's like a body horror. It's a body horror video game.
There are some games that I've been able to force myself through the gore, BioShock being one of those.
Great game, by the way. Dead Space is fantastic.
But it takes a lot for me to push through a lot of gross stuff happening to play them.
I feel you, sister.
But since you mentioned video games, Bernie, this is very timely because the Game Awards has released their Game of the Year nominees.
I saw the list.
Can I share? I'm going to share the list with you because this is an interesting one for us in particular. So the Game of the Year nominees for the Game Awards are Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Tree, Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor ReFantasio. So the thing that's interesting about that list to me, Bernie, is this is, I believe, the first time that I can say with confidence I have not played a single Game of the Year nominee.
I might even be able to go a step further. Balatro, I think I'd heard about, but I thought it was a game from like 4 years ago. Maybe this has just been such a fucking long year. Black Myth Wukong was the only one that I recognized on site. I recognized Elden Ring as a franchise, and Astrobot. I have all different opinions. Like, I feel like Black Myth Wukong exists in a market that I'm not allowed to play it in. Does that make sense?
You are allowed to play it, but it did do very, very well in China in particular. That's where I think a lot of the concurrent players, when it was like spiking so high, it was like setting records for concurrent players on Steam and things like that. I think a lot of those players and a lot of those records were coming out of China. It did incredibly well in sales. It is based on Chinese mythology, which explains a lot of why it would be doing so well there.
The Elden Ring title looks like it's an animated series adaptation of Elden Ring on Netflix. That's what it looks like. I've never heard of this particular flavor of Elden Ring.
No, although there is sort of, there are a lot of people upset that this one is on there. Because it leads to a sort of like philosophical debate about Game of the Year, right? So this is specifically, so Shadow of the Erdtree is like an expansion, a DLC for Elden Ring. So Elden Ring came out several years ago, but Shadow of the Erdtree came out this year. It is not a new game, it is an expansion. It's a huge expansion. It probably could have been released as its own game, but it wasn't. It was released as an expansion for Elden Ring. So there are now a lot of people debating if it should be on there because it's not a new game. It's an expansion. Do expansions belong in Game of the Year contention, or should they be their own thing? There is.
I'm curious. You're the video game expert. How do you feel?
Oh God, let's not go that far. But
you know everything there is about video games, and your opinion is considered to be the standard.
I haven't played a single game.
I'm just setting you up for failure. That's what I do over here.
No, but I would like to see them have their own category. The thing is, there is already a category in the Game Awards for Best Ongoing Game, but that's more tailored towards like
Games
live
as
service
a service,
games.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's where your Fortnites and so on are going to live.
Well, to play Balatro, from what I understand, I guess there's a desktop version, but to play it on mobile, I've got to sign up for Apple Arcade for $10 a month with a free trial. But it's like, really, can I just buy the game because it sounds good? I'm discovering
says the guy who signed up for Mubi.
That's it. I'm already at my limit for like free trials for the week before I forget and suddenly like, why am I spending $80 a month? Where's all this money going?
No,
then I figure it out.
I would prefer to see expansions be their own category, like expansions for best DLC or whatever it is. I feel like if the game didn't come out this year, it shouldn't necessarily be a Game of the Year contender. It doesn't mean that content shouldn't have a chance to shine, but I don't think if they didn't release it as a game, I don't think it should be considered a game for Game of the Year.
I'm so out of touch with modern gaming, I guess, because I looked at this and I just didn't recognize any of them.
Balatro is one that has been very highly recommended by our community in particular. And it's a game that, like you, I've heard of, but I sort of wrote it off as maybe not a game for me because when I saw it build itself as kind of a cross between solitaire and poker, but everyone in our community is saying that it's amazing. I hear words like roguelike, and I'm like, how does that have anything to do with poker meets solitaire? So this is a game that I wrote off for myself that I may need to unwrite off because there's clearly something about it that is more than it's selling itself as. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I like Slay the Spire. You played that, didn't you?
I did not, but you played that quite a bit. That was like a deck building game that you really enjoyed.
And roguelike and all that stuff too. Roguelite. Roguelite is when things carry over, right?
Yes.
Roguelike is when you start over from the beginning. Roguelite, you unlock things that you can then use in subsequent runs.
That sounds right to me.
I'm playing another game on mobile called Slice and Dice, which is a dice rolling game that somebody recommended because I liked Tharsis. And I like it. It's Slice and Dice. It's a fun one. It takes a couple minutes to get into, but it's good. And then Astrobot to me just looks like, if you ask me what is that game, I would say that's a demo for PlayStation VR. If I just saw that, that's what I'd say. Is that not what that character is from?
I believe so, yes. I think that character was originally from PlayStation VR as one of the sort of like tech demos and everything, but now has Astrobot that's come out and is billed as a love letter to platformers.
Okay, so what's going to win Game of the Year?
Okay, so I have not played any of these. I'm going to go ahead and give it to...
Just based on popularity, I would go with Black Myth Wukong.
That does seem like it came out of nowhere. I'm going to pull a wild card here and say Metaphor Refantasia because I don't know what that is.
I was surprised the Nazi, Nazi, that's weird. Where'd that come from?
I did not see that coming.
To Nazi. I'm not going to say that phrase anymore.
Now you're in your own head.
No, that's Nazis all the way down. Anyway, I was surprised that not appearing in the list were Lethal Company, which I'd heard a lot about this year, and I was looking forward to playing myself at some point when I got some friends.
You know what I was surprised not to see?
And Helldivers.
That was the one, yeah. For me, that one was and potentially Palworld. I feel like Palworld and Helldivers also maybe potentially suffered from the same thing that sometimes I think movie award nominations suffer from, which is those ones that come out early in the year tend to fall out of your memory when it comes time to nominate things at the end of the year. That's why we get things like the Oscars race, the Oscar bait movies, whatever, come out later in the year so that when it comes time for nominations, people remember them recently. Whereas both Palworld and Helldivers came out much, much earlier. They were huge deals at that time. But now they've got history that the other games don't have, which is that both of them have fallen off in terms of buzz and player base quite a bit, and so have maybe been written off where the other ones haven't had a chance to be written off yet.
You know what's interesting, too, is that historically, DLC, which is, when we say DLC, for people who don't play video games, it's downloadable content. It's like expansions for the game after the game has been released. So it might come out 2 years afterwards. They put out like a new area or a new level or a new mission or something like that, or a major expansion which radically changes the game. The interesting thing about DLC and Game of the Year is they've been tied together historically because a lot of publishers used to work in the video game industry. You worked for several video game companies. What was the criteria by which people would release Game of the Year editions?
Oh, that's easy. If any site anywhere in the world named you Game of the Year, bam, you get to put a Game of the Year edition. And if that was...
Every game had a Game of the Year edition.
Keep in mind, I'm thinking a lot of times of like the old, like when you would go out and buy the box and it would get like new packaging and like a new disc. And I feel like the discs were mostly like, hey, here's the version with all the patches
That's
installed.
what I'm saying, and all the DLC. So it was really like a collection of the game and all of its released content, patches, and DLC afterwards. That's what they were. They were like the master edition of it, but everyone called them Game of the Year.
Right, because all you had to do was someone had to think your game was great. You could resell. I will actually, I have to give some real credit to Jeff Keighley for what he's done with the Game Awards, because what I find fascinating about that one in particular is every site has its Game of the Year, right? Like every site does their own Game of the Year. The Game Awards is the one that all the other sites report on. And I feel like that's a special distinction. Like you don't see like GameSpot's not reporting on like what IGN nominated as their Game of the Year, right? That's not a thing that they do, but they're all reporting on who the Game Awards nominated.
All right, well, who is on our jury selection committee for Game of the Year today, Ashley?
Well, I would like to thank today's jury, Ethan Eppelman and Nicholas Langley. Thank you both for sponsoring this episode of our show at patreon.com/morningsomewhere. You're our Game of the Year.
How dare you speak to me?
All right, well, that does it for us today, November 19th, 2024. We will be back to talk to you tomorrow. We hope you will be here as well.
Bye, everybody.